Paris on Politics from Fox 32 Chicago.
Some opening shot thoughts. Mayor Johnson has really been banging the drum lately on the need for the state to provide $1 billion more for Chicago public schools. And that drumbeat continues to grow louder. And here's Mayor Johnson banging a different kind of drum. This is footage of the mayor behind the kit at the Pritzker Pavilion at Gospel Fest last weekend. So this is how the mayor chooses to let off steam in the midst of fiscal, crime, and political challenges. My reaction is, dang, those are some pretty tight drumming skills. Seriously, we do have our quarrels with Mayor Johnson and every other public office holder here from time to time, but there's no denying how stressful and many times thankless the job of running the city is. So kudos to the mayor for having a fun and creative talent, an outlet to perhaps de-stress and let out some aggression. And given the revelation of the mayor's musical skill, I thought it would be fun to ask Grok what it would look like if Mayor Johnson, Governor Pritzker, and President Trump formed a rock trio. There you go. Music really does bridge divides and can bring the world a little bit closer together. What a fun concert that might be. Let's just hope these two aren't in attendance.
Coming up on Paris on Politics.
Chicago's top investigator, Inspector General Deborah Witzburg, says she won't run for another term. We ask her why she's hanging it up. Is it time for Chicago to legalize video gaming in restaurants and bars across the city? One alderman says yes. Chronic venous insufficiency, inside the common vein disorder that the White House says President Trump suffers from. And from the South Side to Peru to the halls of power in the Vatican, a new book goes inside the stunning papal conclave that resulted in Chicago's Pope.
This is Paris on Politics from Fox 32 Chicago.
Welcome to Paris on Politics. The city's top investigator is on her first term in office, and it'll be her last. Inspector General Deborah Witzburg, who has had her clashes with Mayor Johnson, announced this evening that she will hang it up once her term is done in April. The mayor will have to appoint someone new, but Witzburg says a new ordinance that passed city council yesterday will give the office more strength to investigate the mayor. Earlier this evening, I spoke to Witzburg via Zoom.
Jobs like this, with the tremendous privilege to serve in them, these are stewardships. The best and the highest responsibility of these positions is to strengthen the institutions we have the privilege of leading so we can hand them off better than we found them. And I think that with yesterday's decision, which is sort of a watershed in effective oversight in Chicago, I am now deeply confident that I can do that I can hand off OIG better and stronger and more effective and more independent than I found it. This job and others like it, this is neither a sprint nor a marathon. This is a relay race, and we ought to run as hard as we can while it's our turn to run, and then pass off the baton, having gained as much ground as we can. And I am now deeply confident that I can do that. I am very much looking forward to the work that we will do and all that we will have to say between now and April when my term ends. And then I will be very happy to hand off a better and stronger OIG to the next person lucky enough to serve in this job.
And, this is a role that the mayor has to appoint. You talk about strengthening the office, but do you worry about the mayor and city council appointing someone that perhaps won't be as serious about the oversight? Because, going back several years, this office didn't have a lot of teeth. It sort of grew over time.
Yeah. One of the things we learned yesterday is that 49 members of City Council voted to strengthen the oversight to which they themselves are subject. That strikes me as a very hopeful place to be, and I think we have every reason to think from that is a body which is ready to exert principled support of effective oversight.
And just take us inside that ordinance, because this was an ordinance that you basically were backing. It was sponsored by Alderman Matt Martin to basically strengthen your ability to investigate the mayor's office and get rid of some of the roadblocks that they were putting up.
Yeah, so the ordinance does two critical things. And I should say this was sort of a compromise solution among us and the law department and Chairman Martin. And as they say with all good compromises, it's not everything I would have liked, but it's tremendous progress on two fronts. One is that it allows us to better protect the integrity and the confidentiality of our investigative interviews by keeping the mayor's lawyers out of the interview room, except under certain limited circumstances. And it allows us broader access to city records, which historically the city has tried to kind of hide behind overbroad assertions of attorney-client privilege. That is, in particular, that is a fight this office has been fighting for almost 20 years. Our efforts to better access documents which the city claims are privileged, those efforts go back to the early 2000s. Yesterday's vote is such a big deal because it secures protections that have eluded this office for almost 2 decades.
And Witzburg's term ends this coming April. Hey, what if you didn't need to drive to the suburbs to play video game machines in bars and restaurants? One alderman says it's time for Chicago to get in on the game and allow gambling across the city, as the mayor and council members are about to embark on the nearly impossible task of closing a $1 billion budget gap. And joining us now is a sponsor of this new gaming ordinance, 9th Ward Alderman Anthony Beal. Alderman Beal, thanks for talking with us. So tell us what this would allow, where, and what kinds of games.
Well, what we're looking at is having video gaming across the entire city. And where we have people who already have, a business license for a personal place of amusement, a PPA license, they will qualify for video gaming. And the reason I put this forward is because I don't see any, anything coming out of this administration that's preparing us for at least a $1.5 to $1.7 billion deficit. We don't have a hiring freeze in place. We're still spending. We're not doing any cuts and efficiencies. And so, somebody has to step up and say, look, we need to find some additional revenue that is not going to be harmful to the people. Gaming is a choice. And I think we can make at least $100 million if it's done right by putting this forward where people have a choice to go and participate in video gaming. And let me just say, the current policy that's in place right now that was passed out of Springfield is totally inefficient. The state is getting the lion's share of the money, and then there's a clause in it that if the city doesn't make, if gaming is harming the casino, then there's a penalty clause in there. All those things need to be taken out because we see right now video gaming is not making nowhere near the money that it was promised that it would make, even with the temporary casino. And knowing that we already have a bad, casino operator that was picked by the prior administration, we picked probably the least qualified casino operator that we could have possibly picked with the worst credit rating. And so we can't look to them to bridge our pension problem that we're facing. So, I said, look, let's take the bull by the horn. Let's have some leadership and some foresight and put something in place where we can start chipping away at this $1.357 billion deficit that we're facing this fall, because there's no leadership coming out of this administration that's preparing us for this problem.
And it's really 1.7. That's a huge deficit compared to the entire city budget. Would this also go in airports? Because there's another ordinance that would allow them in Midway and O'Hare.
Well, I have no problem because I know one of my colleagues has already put something forward as well. And I think, we need to merge my ordinance and his ordinance, bring them together, and we should do this citywide, including at the airports.
And what about, the notion that it could attract more gambling addiction? It could attract maybe a seedier element in some restaurants in some neighborhoods. I mean, you say it's no cost to the city, but isn't there a hidden cost?
Well, let me just say, again, I said it's a choice. I'm not a huge advocate for video gaming, but it is a huge market. We're losing over $40 million a month right now on the south side of Chicago because people are going right across the border over to Indiana from Chicago and from Illinois. So we're losing $40 million a month that we could be using to plug some of our holes. And so, we chose to put a casino, where they put it, which was a bad location. We know that Bally's is a bad operator. They have bad credit rating, and we don't know what's going to come out of the current casino that was put forward. And so we have to do something. We have to do something other than putting up more speed cameras that's hitting everybody upside the head, that's driving to and from work, going to the grocery store. And so all those things are hindering us. We're putting 50 more speed cameras on the street with no input from the local aldermen, and they're putting them all across the city. And when you talk about a huge revenue grab, that's hurting the people more than video gaming, because video gaming, again, is a choice.
And speeding you could say is a choice, but sometimes it's not a choice if you don't know you're doing it. But let me ask you, Jill Jaworski, the CFO of the city, said this would only bring in $10 million. You're saying $100 million, and she said it could cannibalize some of the money that could go to the Bally's casino that you're talking about, which the city is depending on for lots of revenue. What about that?
Well, this is the same person that told us that we had two balanced budgets, and the last two budgets have not been balanced. And so I don't put much creed in what she says, because everything that they give us has not been forthright and honest. And so let's be honest. Show us the numbers. So I don't put any credit in what this administration is putting forward.
When you look at $1.5 billion deficit here, is there any way to get out of this without a property tax hike?
Well, let me just say this. We need to look at cuts and efficiencies before we look at property tax. This administration refuses to look at cuts and efficiencies. They want to continue to raise fines and fees, raise your taxes, and be able to continue to spend. There is so much fluff and waste in these budgets that we pass every single year. And, this administration just refuses to look at the waste that's out there. Middle management, we have probably 6 people to every manager and supervisor in the city of Chicago. Why is that? We need to do away with a lot of middle management positions that we have. So I'm not going to look at property tax until we look at cuts and efficiencies and look at additional revenues that are not going to be harmful to the people of the city of Chicago.
All right, 9th Ward Alderman Anthony Beal, never one to mince words. Thanks for joining with us.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. And up next, President Trump is diagnosed with a common health condition. We're talking with a doctor about it when we come back.